What is going on, everybody? It is Damien G with a special. If you know me, you know this is going to be a special Big Gold Belt Media review, kind of a sub story of the main review over on our YouTube page, where Najir, aka Two Chains, did his spoiler free review of Spider Man No Way Home. But my teammate Terrell and I decided to do full fledged
Yes.
spoilerific man tier having Aunt May morning Jamie Foxx shape up and review of Spider-Man No Way Home, otherwise known as the Venom we're gonna get eventually. You know, wink, wink, nod, nod, hint, hint.
Right.
The Sinister 5.5, but that's neither here nor there. Terrell, let's just start real easy.
Yes, sir.
Where does this rank on the pantheon of MCU films for you specifically?
This is two.
Number two.
This is number two.
Okay.
And this is still being rearranged as I go back and rewatch these movies. But it would definitely be Endgame,
Yes.
Spider-Man, Winter Soldier.
Yes. Okay, we're here already. Okay,
Right.
great. This is good. I just had a conversation with a friend before we logged on, and basically he said it's top 5 MCU. I said top 4. I can interchange it with Cap 3, but it's definitely in my top 4. I'm just connected. So here's my ranking: Endgame, Winter Soldier, Infinity War, then Spider-Man or Cap 3, depending on my mood. But if I see Spider-Man one more time, it'll usurp Cap 3.
The reason I say like right after Endgame, because that movie is also a combination of like all those movies, and
Yes.
this movie is a combination of like all the 20 years of live action Spider-Man, a big love letter to that live action Spider-Man over 20 years. So those would be 1 and 2, and then like kind of everything else fits as like an individual movie.
Right.
Or a conclusion, like you know what I mean, like
Yeah, it brought it to a culmination. It kind of tied everything into a little bow.
right.
The new debate now is this the best triumvirate of movies in a series? I still say Cap narrowly above Spider-Man's trilogy,
Right.
but it's close. But all in all, so people who may not know this, I mean, the hat and the shirt notwithstanding, Spider-Man was my childhood. Him and Optimus Prime, neck and neck. You know, as far as like my heroes as a child in New York City. Because, you know, Spider-Man is this freaking geek who loves science, loves his friends, and is a good kid by all accounts. And he just tries to navigate, you know, in the comics, high school life, married life, the secret identity bit, you know, which for me was my first foray into trying to figure out, you know, how to balance secret identities. Because, you know, Clark Kent, what have you, just puts his glasses on. You know, Superman just puts his glasses on, he's Clark Kent. Batman puts the cowl on, but at the same token, him and Bruce Wayne are two separate entities.
Right.
Spider-Man's differentiation is his sense of humor when he has the costume on versus Peter Parker when he's out of costume. But in this movie, when I tell people this is the best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen, and it's not hyperbole, it's taking a freshness of the MCU, it's taking the lore, it's taking even the redeemable aspects of the Amazing Spider-Man and the Raimi trilogy, and giving it to you in this love letter. I think that's the best word to use. It's this love letter to Spider-Man fans out there to say, hey, if you've stuck with us since, you know, 2002 when we had Toby in them,
Right.
and you're still here, enjoy. And there was, like I talk about with pro wrestling, there's a lot to enjoy in this movie. And, you know, I'm just going to say for you, what is one of the things, give me 3 things that immediately after watching this movie stands out for you.
So one of the big things, and I'm taking this from another show that I follow and stuff like that, but I agree with it, is that Homecoming and Far From Home feel like MCU movies with Spider-Man in it.
Yes.
And this movie feels like a Spider-Man movie. Like even though Doctor Strange and everybody's there, this straight up feels like a Spider-Man movie. You know what I mean? I feel like those other two movies are still kind of carried with the whole Iron Man legacy thing, and this is the first movie that breaks away from that, and you finally get to see, Spider-Man just be Spider-Man in this movie. Not that he wasn't in those other movies, but it's kind of hard to explain that. But that was the biggest thing, is just finally seeing him just, hey, I got this on my own. I need to pick up the slack and handle this responsibility, which if you used to reading and seeing in various, forms of media, Spider-Man over the years, this is how we've dealt with it. But you said three things, right? Like that was like,
yeah, three things.
Definitely.
And if you can't think of them yet, we could process it as the show goes on. But
definitely. Second thing would be like seeing those side characters get that character work in the movie. I feel like they were there in the other movies, but they really didn't get a chance to do as much as they did. And they definitely had more emotional beats, more conversation. And the second one, you get to definitely see more Ned, more MJ. And then of course the variation of villains and how they were able to balance that so well. Because normally when you get too many people on screen, they never know how to handle it, and it becomes a mess. And this was perfectly handled, man. I have nothing to complain about because usually when you see one of three villains, you're like, man, this is gonna be terrible. That's been the thing, yeah, might as well. They're not gonna do it right. It's terrible, but they did an excellent job.
Go back to the Raimi verse and just look at Spider-Man 3, where you're trying to shoehorn so many villains in one movie, where it's like, wow. Because, the big thing was the Spider-Man fans were thinking this is going to be a Sinister Six story.
Right.
Where, with the Amazing Spider-Man, they were leading up to that. But we didn't get that. Spoilers, again, for those who have not seen it. A complete spoiler review here. Discussion and whatnot. We got 5. Technically, if you want to count Mysterio and some like weird, back footage, could be a half, or even if you want to talk the post-credit where we have Venom talking about the Flying Tin Man and the green guy and the purple alien, which Tom Hardy is just hilarious as Eddie Brock. So we got 5, and you were led to believe that none of these guys could coexist except to kill Spider-Man. But then you're given these little nuanced wrinkles to each individual character, no matter how quick they were on screen. Everybody served a purpose. Maybe for the Lizard, but he had his moments. Dr.
Right.
Connors had his moments. For me, one of the things that stood out the most, to your point, is the side characters got a lot of shine. Whereas, number one, Wong was in the movie for like a minute and a half, but we learned so much about Wong that he's been the Sorcerer Supreme since the Blip, which I didn't know. So I'm thinking, okay, we could take this somewhere else, because, the Shang-Chi movie, with him fighting Abomination, we didn't understand what was going on with that. But now that we know he's the Sorcerer Supreme, that's something. Look, I've been around enough Filipinos in my life, because a lot of them are my best friend, and I've dated Filipinas before, where let me tell you, the grandma, how like in MCU movies recently, we've had that one side character that really kind of catches us off guard.
Right.
So in Eternals, it was oh my God, the filmer, the guy who was filming, the human.
Yeah, his manager. Yeah, he was hilarious.
Yeah, the manager, the chauffeur. He caught me off guard. But Ned with the grandma, who was kind of like winking at Toby, but then talking about that they had powers, and Doctor Strange goes, well, you might want to see a doctor for that. And I'm thinking, well, duh, Steven, that's who you are. But then that little wrinkle of, oh shit, Ned actually might be a sorcerer at some point. He has something in his story. And the little jokes of, talking to Toby, where he goes, so did you have a best friend too? He's like, yeah, he died in my arms. And then him having to go up to Peter and say, I will never betray you.
Yeah,
you have my word.
He's looking at him weird, like, what are you talking about?
Like, you good? He's like, I'm always going to be your best friend. I promise. I'm never going to betray you, And then I know at first, the first couple of movies, people didn't like the MJ character at first in the first movie.
They didn't really
And
give her anything to do.
no,
up
she was just
until that point,
there. She was there. But this one, they gave her depth and context
Right.
as more. Look, I saw online today, which pissed me the hell off, where someone said that MJ's a downgrade from Kirsten Dunst's portrayal of Mary Jane Watson.
What?
Uh-huh. I said, tell me you're sensitive while telling me you're too sensitive about comic books, you know. And I thought that they incorporated the Watson part where she even says, well, I don't really go by that name.
Right.
Cool. They paid homage to it. So check that off for the comic book nerds. We don't got to talk about that. It's been discussed. She's MJ Watson. Perfect. MJ Jones Watson. Covered that out. Now, everybody else in this movie, you know, from Doctor Strange, who I knew would only have maybe 15, 20 minutes of screen time, but the way they got rid of him in this movie, I thought was ingenious because remember what Thor said in his first movie, magic and science, i.e. math, they're one and the same.
Right.
So Spidey using math and geometry to mess up Steven and catch him in the mirror dimension.
Yeah.
Oh man, I thought that was so expertly done because it's like, dude, you just got smarted by a kid. Like, come on, bro.
He
like,
doesn't overstay his welcome, which is what I really like. The marketing and everything make it seem like he's like a bigger, like he is a big part of the movie, but he's not the entire movie. He's there, what, like you said, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then they figure out a way to kind of get him out of the picture for a while other things happen. And you know, and like you said, they say so much without saying a lot in a little bit of time. Like you said, we got the information on Wong being Sorcerer Supreme. We figured out what was at the house. You know, we weren't even thinking about, oh yeah, you know, Steven was gone 5 years. Who was holding it down? You know, that whole time. And like you said, we seen Wong and Shang-Chi and you know, stuff like that. And it's like I said, it's been what, 5 years since we got a Doctor Strange movie. So it's just so much. It's so much on the line for this character now, and everything going forward. That, you know, even though this is a Spider-Man movie, this was big. This was a big dumb promotion for Doctor Strange going forward.
For future references, yes, exactly. Because we got that at the end with the whole teaser trailer of the next Doctor Strange movie, which we didn't think we would get. But
they ain't doing it. They haven't done
here we are.
They haven't done a teaser trailer in a haven't done a trailer in a movie since like X-Men. That I say, ooh. They usually it's been like it's some ridiculous end credit scene or something like that, leading, or Spider-Man will be back and you know whatever, something like that. But like I said, we haven't done a trailer in the movie since in a long time. Like, so, but yeah, man, I really enjoyed it. This is the best visuals I've seen for the magic for Doctor Strange they've done so far. Because even though we got to see something during that whole was it Infinity War?
Yes.
Yeah, we got to see a bunch of stuff. We get to see him go at it in Infinity War and stuff like that. But man, seeing him really get into his groove with the mirror dimension and the rune spell, everything like that, and seeing how powerful he is, because I feel like even that whole fight with Thanos, yeah, we saw it, but we didn't really get a glimpse because everything was happening so fast. You know what I mean? So, it looked really good, and I saw it in IMAX. So it was, I was just so amazed. Like I was trying to grab everything in and take everything in at once. So.
And I think for me also, while watching just the visuals, because I've never been a movie graphics guy. I'm a story person, but being able to be captivated by visuals while still telling an engrossing story, you know, shout out to John Watts, because he caught a lot of flack coming into this series, and he was catching flack because he got tabbed to do Fantastic Four, which I can't wait for that either.
Right.
You know, he bought it. You know, he was able to encapsulate so many different storylines into this movie where, like I said before, every character felt important to the story. Nobody was really a throwaway. And we still haven't even gotten to the villains and their history being brought into, because originally when the rumors were going, it was just strictly, hey, everybody got brought in at the moment they were about to die. You know, all the villains were brought in the moment they were about to die. But you get a little bit more context. when the spell is cast and Peter F's up the spell, it's like, well, everyone who either A, knows Peter is Spider-Man or just knows of Spider-Man in other dimensions kind of thing. So that's why we were able to get all these different variations, because you have the Amazing Universe with the Lizard, and with Jamie Foxx's Electro, which, if you wanted a way to make him more comic book accurate while still keeping him current and updated, they did a good job of that. The Raimi verse having Doc Ock, Willem Dafoe for MVP, you know what I mean? Because, man, just so much goodness coming out, even with the bad guys, like we don't need to be cured. We have gifts. When in reality, if you look at it from that standpoint, they do have gifts, but they just happen to use them for evil, and we still get the Doc Ock reclamation project that we had at the end of Spider-Man 2, where he turns good. So we still have that little nugget of him kind of doing a face turn in the middle of the movie, when he gets knocked out the window. But I think for me, and a lot of people, the biggest thing was, are the Spider-Men going to unite? Oh, like, is Toby in the movie? Is Andrew in the movie?
Right.
Duh, we knew this, but
the worst kept secret in the history. The worst kept secret. It was already out the bag. It was just more so how you contain it in trailers at that point, because it was so obvious. Like if they hadn't shown the villains, maybe if they but it's like, how do you market this without marketing the biggest focal point of the movie? Is like, yeah, they are coming back, which in turn means that these Spider-Man are coming back. Now, it wasn't guaranteed, and that was kind of the tipping point. Like, if they didn't come back, it would have been a pitchfork situation. Their fire is burning every
Correct.
So I don't know how they were going to do that without bringing them in.
And the thing about that is that, like you said earlier, too many villains, too many cooks in the kitchen brings down the quality of a movie.
Right.
And everybody had just enough screen time to matter. I didn't think the Lizard would be my source of weird comic relief, but almost like King Shark-ish at some points, even though he's Dr. Connors. Cool. The little repartee he had with Jamie Foxx's Electro, talking about, dude, didn't you have like a comb over and glasses last time I saw you? It was never addressed why all of a sudden he has a shape up and he looks fresh to death, in this universe.
I feel like they did say something like, oh yeah, just being in this universe, like the energy.
Yeah, the energy of the universe. Right.
Yeah, like whatever it was. But
I didn't know electricity can give me a good haircut, but hey, maybe he found something I didn't.
That was one of the things too that I really enjoyed, is they didn't just do what I thought they were going to do and the villains just be like a cameo and disappear type thing.
Right.
They stayed along for the movie, and like you said, everybody had time, and everybody had their beats. Everybody explained, hey, this is what I'm doing. This, that, and the third. And I think that's one of the things that kind of sucks about doing those triple villain things or quadruple villains. Like, everybody gets like 5 minutes, and that's the end of the movie, or they wait until they become the villain in the last 2 seconds of the movie, and then that's the fight, and then that's it. You know what I mean? So I think that's a big point. And like I say, we're talking about Toby and Andrew. I for sure thought they were just going to be like, an end game type thing, like, where they call everybody in. And no, they came in second act, which was crazy. And you get conversations and you get jokes, and it just makes that movie so much better, and it gives it so much heart, because you're having these conversations as a fan watching those movies of things that we've discussed and thought about over the years with those other Spider-Man. Like, man, what would they say if they talked to each other? And you get it here, which is freaking amazing. No pun intended, but
especially when Toby having to tell Andrew he is amazing, because his series is much maligned. Oh, that line about the cool preacher, whatever they call it. Oh man, that had me rolling in the theater, because Toby really did look like one of those like cool preachers.
Yeah, a youth pastor. Yeah,
the youth pastor is like, whoa,
he dressed like that.
Look at you giving this good advice and having the costume underneath, where Andrew comes in. And the thing I did like about, and I'll go back to Amazing Spider-Man really quickly, I loved how awkward Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker was. he had this weird prepubescent angst about him where he's, Toby didn't really have this because they just went from like, I'm a nerd, I'm jacked. Tom's character went through this, oh, gee, shucks, Mr. Stark, like a little kid.
Right.
But Garfield's rendition of Peter was more, in my opinion, comic book accurate because he's a nerd. He was a skater boy nerd, loved science, but his socialization skills left a lot to be desired. So he didn't really know how to work within his body. When I went back and rewatched The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, like he didn't understand that. He didn't understand, well, I'm a superhero now, so what do I do here? So for him to need that reassurance in this movie from Toby, from Tom's Spider-Man or Peter's, and I just liked it. I enjoyed it so much to the point where now people want to see an Amazing Spider-Man 3, especially the joke where he's like, everyone's talking like, oh, I fought an alien in outer space. I fought Black Goo. I fought a guy in a rhino costume, like, that was funny. Like that line was funny. And just everybody had their own arcs for as long as Toby was in this movie, for as long as Andrew was in this movie.
Yeah, it's cool to know, and even for the writers to take the time to acknowledge that their lives still go on beyond those movies. Like, if the clock's still rolling, stuff's happening, and have Toby, Toby's aged up a bit. I mean, whatever age he is now, he's the OG Spider-Man. Hey, this is how you do this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, hey, eventually you're gonna get the girl. So eventually I don't remember how. I just seen Spider-Man 1 and 2 the other day, but I don't remember how 3 ends. Like, if like I knew him and Mary Jane were like together or whatever it was, or whatever
they broke up again.
Did they?
Well, that's why he says in the movie when Toby goes, oh, we make it work, but he doesn't have the ring on his finger. So they're like, oh, we make it work. It's like for however that works out, they make it work. But again, like just seeing the authenticity of all the characters being true to their iterations in which they came out. And like you said, Toby now is the OG Spider-Man. He's the old school, been there, done that.
Right.
I am the Uncle Ben of this group pretty much now. So, and somebody brought this up on social media the other day, and I loved it. I said, it would be funny if in the MCU, Toby would have been Uncle Ben. Where, like, remember in Legends of Tomorrow and the Arrowverse where they had Kingdom Come Superman talking to Ray Palmer, the Atom, and Brandon Routh talking to each other. So if you have Toby as Uncle Ben in the MCU talking to Tobey Maguire, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, that would be a weird meta moment, to be like, oh, cool. But Toby came across like the cool uncle that gives you good advice when you don't want to listen to your dad. And that's exactly how he came across. The moral compass, I think, is the best way to put that. He was his moral compass. Yeah. But I did love, again, I'll just spitball a couple of things and we can go from here. The little stare down that him and Andrew's Spider-Man had in Ned's grandma's living room where they kind of test each other's powers. I thought that little sizing each other up was kind of cool. I love MJ throwing the bread at Andrew's Spider-Man talking about, I'm not dodging bread. Like, bread's not really good. So why would I dodge? Because I screamed in the theater, that's a waste of carbs. Like, don't be throwing bread over there. Like, no, don't waste that bread. And then when she tells Andrew, climb on the ceiling, and he's literally like, this ain't enough. She goes, no, because think about it. In the MCU, there's tons of superheroes that could probably do something like that.
Right.
That could just hang from a ceiling. She's like, I need to see more, And then the grandma saying, can you get the cobwebs in the corner? Because I can't reach up there. So I thought that's something a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man would do. So I thought that was cool in and of itself. And like I said, Toby having the costume underneath the clothes. And then we fast forward to the saddest part of the movie where our boy Willem Dafoe goes full Norman Osborn.
Excellent job, man. That he you could tell he wanted to come back, boy. He was passionate about like he never left. Like, man, that was almost 20 years ago. Like,
and it doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like it because he picks up right where he leaves off. And and you know how a lot of MCU fans are going to say, Tony Stark's my Iron Man, or Chris Evans is my Captain America, and that's that. Yeah. I don't care who they cast after this, or that Chadwick will never be. There will never be another T'Challa because of Chadwick. There will never be a Norman Osborn for me without Willem Dafoe at the very least voicing the character. Holy, all he needs is the weird waves, the hair waves. And then he would pretty much be cartoon comic book accurate, because he goes from crazy to normal to a point as a guy like me who works in psychology has to wonder a little bit, bro, do you really have multiple personalities? Because you do this a little too well. So, I mean, for him to just vacillate between both characters, Norman and the Goblin, it's seamless.
Right. They definitely do take the time to acknowledge, to say, hey, Oscorp doesn't exist. I know that's been a question like people have been thinking about for a while now. Like Harry Osborn doesn't exist in this universe. Like Oscorp doesn't. So I mean, I guess that, whatever they do going forward, I guess never get a Green Goblin, but what I mean? I'm sure there's alternate Goblin characters they can create that exist.
Of course.
So but like you said, yeah, he definitely came back to play, man. Like he said he didn't want to come back unless he was doing something physical.
He did his own stunts.
Right. I'm like, okay.
Willem Dafoe, go ahead. Being 70 years old, doing your own stunts. Go ahead.
Is he 70?
He pushing it. Hold on, I'll look it up while we're talking right now. But all this praise we're heaping on him, he does the unthinkable in this movie. He kills Aunt May.
I honestly did not see that coming. I thought it was, I don't know. I didn't think it had to be anybody. I didn't think anybody was going to die or anything like that. It wasn't even in the thought in my head, because the whole movie, I'm like, okay, so how are they going to fix this whole identity thing? Because Spider-Man doesn't function with like just open identity, and we've seen that in the comics. You know what I mean? We've seen how that works. Like, people hunting down his friends and family. People trying to kill Aunt May. You know what I mean? We've seen that before when he did the whole identity reveal. It just doesn't work. And I didn't see the Aunt May thing coming, and I don't know if that's just something specifically they want to do with Tom, but they just really lingered on that scene, and it was so powerful. It was so emotional. And I was just like, yeah, man, I had to bring the Kleenex on that one.
I shed some manly tears in that movie theater because, number one, I've always had the crush on Marissa Tomei since I was a kid.
George Costanza.
So I didn't even know she was 57 years old, man. Really? I'm like, how old is she? 57? Man, listen. And then, Willem Dafoe, 66. So he's pushing 70. So, but watching the way her death scene plays out, where, Tom's like, oh, it's all good. Like, let's go. I'm going to get you to safety. And even she's just like acting like no big deal until she just collapses. And you're like, wait a minute. I thought she was good. And then obviously because it's an MCU movie, Disney somewhat, they're not going to show like this big gaping bloody wound. So they're going to show like she's been bleeding profusely this whole time. And we just didn't realize it. Because when that glider hit her, man,
they've shown people get decapitated. They show that.
We saw someone get decapitated in the MCU.
Yeah, they showed Thanos get his head cut off.
Oh yeah, but there was like blood gushing everywhere. It wasn't like
what was that? You see, throw the axe in his chest, like
yeah, but he's an alien. We're talking about humans here. I think it's okay because Thanos is an alien.
It's okay.
Yeah, non-earthly beings are okay, apparently, according to Disney. But, but just the way she dies. And then, I know a lot of people are bitching about her being the one to deliver the line. I loved it because
it was well done. It was very well done.
She was his Uncle Ben, because we don't really talk about Uncle Ben in the MCU. We never have.
Yeah, we assume that he exists because like when you watch Civil War, like they mention like something happening. But they never say who it was or where it was, or if if this was a situation where he just was living with her and maybe it was just some random stranger it happened to. They never really get into it. But,
and just having her deliver the line in its entire comic book entirety, not the truncated with great power comes great responsibility. Her exact line is verbatim from the comic book when Uncle Ben dies, because there's more dialogue. So that exact line she used, that's from the comic book. And I just, when Tom starts sobbing, I start sobbing. the person next to me who I didn't even know was sobbing. It's like, a lot of people just felt it. And the rage that Tom feels in that moment, that Peter feels in that moment of he gonna kill the Green Goblin.
Oh man.
And I wouldn't have faulted him at all. I'm like, you know what? I got you. I understand.
Right.
Without the black suit, like in Spider-Man 3, when Toby went ham on old Sandy, but no, I understood and I felt it, and I thought her death was handled expertly. And then, as we said, having Peter 2 and 3 show up and kind of walk him through his grief, because when you're grieving, the first thing you're going to do is be in denial. The stages of grief, and basically him telling them, don't tell me you know how I feel. Don't hit me with that spiel that you're going to tell me you know exactly how I feel, until the Uncle Ben line, until the Aunt May line,
so
where he's looking at them saying, how do you know that? Because Uncle Ben told us when he died, because Peter 1 thought she died for no reason whatsoever.
Right.
So again, handled tastefully, emotionally done, done.
And Defoe, Goblin was like, look,
Oof.
she died because of you. She wasn't even supposed to be here. Like,
I was coming for you.
That was all you. Yeah, like he was just like, yo, that whole fight, like leading up to that, was so ridiculous. Like, I'm like, yo, he is beating on this kid. I'm like, they like fighting through the condominium, going through levels. I'm like, how are they both still alive? They trading blows. He's hitting them. He's laughing it off. I'm like, this is like the greatest thing ever. I'm like, how have I been blessed to stay alive this long to see something this great? Like this I'm like, fight. Just if I could tell myself X amount of time ago, if you hold on, you go get a Spider-Man movie with everybody in it. Like, I just would have never. I thought I called you a liar. This was not.
My man literally got power bombed through a table, through a floor. Like the Green Goblin power bombed Spider-Man through the floor. Come on, man. Come on.
Giving it to him. Like, oh my goodness. Like,
Eugene in the chat, bro, I cried. You know why? Man, listen, we all cried.
Yeah.
We all cried.
It's okay.
It's a safe space. Safe space.
I knew what I was getting into with hey, I feel like every one of these movies, it hits me a different way, man. Because, my Spider-Man bias aside, man, like, it's just like the whole thing in Far From Home, and still dealing with the Tony Stark stuff and everything else. I was like, oh god, I can't keep doing this. Like, so they get me every time.
Marvel giving us the history on grief. Basically, they want us to just mourn everybody, prepare us for sadness at this point. But going back to the film, I enjoy the fact that the villains, not only did they have an arc, but they had an ending. They had an end point, because Spider-Man doesn't kill. He doesn't hurt. He doesn't want to maim. So it's one of those situations where the idea of curing them, that was genius. That was genius. I thought, you know what? Yes, because that is what Peter Parker would do. He would try to fix the problem through the one thing he thinks he knows how to do well, better than anyone else in the MCU, science. And having 3 Peter Parkers in the lab and spinning their own version of the meme of the pointing where Ned goes, Peter, and they all answer.
I loved it.
You see everybody pointing. I'm like, yeah, the meme. And I'm glad they did it that way, as opposed to, in costume pointing at one another.
Right.
But having Octavius have his moment, having Jamie Foxx, whose Electro felt like such a loser and a loner, wanting to stay in this universe because he's somebody. Right. He's fully human again, like he's in his form, so he wants to be able to stay in this universe. The Lizard just wants to turn people into lizards. That's fine. Sandman just wants to go home and see his daughter. And the Goblin, like you said, there's no Oscorp. There's no Harry. This is fresh ground for him to play in. So that's his want.
Sandman didn't die.
No.
And he like blew away or
Yeah,
whatever.
he disappeared into the wind to, you know.
They
But even then, like he thought he was helping at the beginning, like when he gets brought into the universe, he thought he was helping his universe's Spider-Man. So he's like, dude, what's going on? I thought, what happened?
right.
And then all of a sudden he's like, bonk y'all. See, this is why I'm a bad guy. I don't trust none of y'all, which is what Flint Marco does. He vacillates between heel face more than the Big Show. So that makes perfect sense in the comic books. I enjoyed the little interactions he had, but for me,
what's the guy's name that plays that character? Was he not there? Were they just CG the whole time, or because I was trying to figure out why they kept him in his sand form the whole time, and you didn't see him go human until like the end, of course, or his solidified form where he lost control of it. They never really got into that.
I think I didn't read what it had happened, but I wouldn't be surprised while this was being filmed that he was just doing this all in green screen,
right?
And on his own private location, what have you, to portray the character. And think about it too, because he's not in his universe, he can't solidify. That we didn't know what the side effects were of everybody being brought to that universe. In this case, like we said, Jamie Foxx is human all of a sudden. He has his human form. Doc Ock is bad. You know what I mean? He's not good yet. The Lizard's still the Lizard. So maybe that was kind of a byproduct of him being brought into this universe, but it's not really discussed. But again, the belief in Peter Parker and Spider-Man being able to help, all the villains were even willing just to give it a shot. All right, I'm going to let you try, because even in other media, I'm thinking of the Saturday morning Spider-Man cartoon where he led the Secret Wars team, if you remember that far back.
Yeah, I remember that.
Where all of a sudden he was thrust into this leadership and people were supposed to trust him, and he didn't really prove himself until the end. Similar schematic here, where he had to prove overcoming his grief, still staying true to his morals and his moral high ground, and protecting his friends. Because we forget that Spider-Man, in every iteration, doesn't want to see his friends get hurt. So he's trying to protect as many loved ones as humanly possible. So they stay true to that regard, which I loved just watching that play out. So we get to the end battle, right? Which, like, oh crap, it's the Sinister 5.2 versus the 3 Spider-Men. And the key is, how are they going to win this fight? How is this going to be ended? We knew at the end it was going to be Goblin because it's Defoe. And we knew that Molina's Doc Ock would have a hand in it, but we didn't know how. So one by one, people got picked off. Lizard gets picked off. Sandman gets picked off. Electro gets drained. And then we're left to, Doc Ock kind of doing the face turn and saying, all right, I got this. I'll take care of this. Go handle Osborn.
Right.
And I even like their repartee back and forth during the movie too. Like Norman? Otto, like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I definitely like that the characters from their respective universes like communicated with each other. Like,
yes,
they're aware of each other. You know what I mean? Like, no, he's gone 2 years ago. He died. Like, so,
like, dude, you're dead. Like, am I? Okay, thanks for telling me. Didn't know that, but it all played out. I don't want to say it was formulaic, but it was as good as to be expected.
Right.
With all 3 Spider-Men finally working together, everybody gets their final hurrah moment, with Garfield finally being able to save someone.
That was amazing. Like, the whole theater lost it. Like, yeah, oh my, like, because everybody knew, like, everybody,
right?
Because that's how that movie ends. You know what I mean? Like, that's how that movie ends. There's no happy ending for that movie. It was just like, okay, keep being Spider-Man. You know what I mean?
And he said in his little arc, he says, "Look, I stopped pulling my punches." So who's to say this version of Spider-Man wasn't militant and angry and fighting all the time and probably beat the crap out of everybody within an inch of their life, but he was able to.
I was gonna say that was another thing about this movie. The tone shift a couple times. Like, it goes from light and funny to real. Like, I want to say dark. I want to say dark and serious, but it just gets real heavy. Real. Yeah, I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, what are we watching here? The Spider-Man? Like, oh man.
I was waiting for him to turn to Spider-Man noir at this point, because when you get to that level of Spider-Man where you're just bitter and glib, You know,
Right.
that's where Andrew's character has been this entire time since Gwen's death. But
And
watching him be
again,
able to save, go ahead.
I was gonna say again, I really appreciate that they took the extra time to mention this is what's
Yes.
been going on. They didn't have to, so they neatly take the time to tie up those movies and retrospectively make them better movies on the rewatch, because you know where they're going, you know how it ends. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the Disney happy ending that you see at the end of the movie. Like, yeah, this is how it plays out. This is the life. You know what I mean? So
It really is.
yeah.
And watching him save MJ, the whole theater gets all choked up because the facial expressions of Andrew Garfield were impeccable. When he
Right.
caught MJ and he asked her, "Is she okay?" And she asked him, "Are you okay?" And he's like starting to break, like he was about to cry. He's like, "Yep, I'm good. Like, I'm good." And we're just all like, okay, it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. We're all, again, crying grown man tears here in the movie
Right.
theater, you know. And to be fair, one of my best friends who went with me, he's one of the toughest guys I know, military vet, all that stuff. Even he was sobbing and crying next to me.
Fiction hit different, man. I try to tell people fiction hit different. Especially when you watching something over the years, it's like a part of your family, man. It's right there with you. You know what I mean? So you're following these characters, you become emotionally invested, and it's going to hit you. Like, I don't care how hard you are. Like,
nope. You're going to feel some type of way. And then, the battle between
right.
not Toby, you get the battle between Tom's Spider-Man versus Dafoe's Goblin. And like you said earlier, they beat the times they fought in this movie, they beat the living hell out of each other. But now Spider-Man has nothing but rage in him right now. Now it's no, like Peter in the Raimi verse wanted to avenge Uncle Ben.
Oh, it was personal.
That. It was personal. And he beat the ever-living crap out of Osborn to the point where Osborn started smiling like on some, S&M stuff. And I'm thinking, bruh, you shouldn't be smiling right now. You shouldn't be this happy to be getting your ass kicked by Spider-Man because he wants him to, quote unquote, give in to the dark side. You know what I mean? Like, if you remember Dafoe's monologue in the Raimi verse, where what if they could team up? Like, I'm bringing this out of you. I'm making you into the best version of yourself in my estimation. And then when he was about to impale him with the glider, and then Toby stops it, and that still doesn't stop Tom. He's still pushing against another Spider-Man strength, and Toby just giving the look like this isn't the way, and then seeing Norman stab Toby and the theater. There was a woman in front of me when Norman stabs Toby's Peter and says, she literally go, "Oh, that dirty bitch." I'm talking about Norman Osborn. I cackled. I cackled so loud because she was like, "Oh, that dirty bitch Osborn." I'm like, "Yep, that's about right," because that's something Norman Osborn would definitely do. And yeah, just a lot of stuff, man. Yeah, in that moment, we thought Toby was going to die. We thought Peter was going to kill Norman. Woo!
Oh,
a lot of trauma.
I was like, you've got to be kidding me, man. I was not ready for that. I was not ready.
Same. And just, it all ends with, Doctor Strange coming back from being over the Grand Canyon for 12 hours, which I thought was a really nice plot device to explain what he's been doing this entire time. So it's like, yeah, I've been over the Grand Canyon for 12 freaking hours. So thanks for nothing, guys, And then the subtle nod of appreciation when he finds out that Ned was the one that could do the, the portals with the sling ring. Like, oh, okay, I see you. Like, all right, maybe you were telling the truth about being a wizard. Mm-hmm. So all in all, then we get the end where we have this, they're all coming through. Who are they you're talking about, Steven? We don't know what you're talking about. There might have been a Kraven the Hunter sighting. There was a Rhino sighting in those shadows or those like figures in the multiverse. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People were saying that the person with the spear was Kraven. So there were people coming through. So if you wanted to do the Easter eggs on that, people have fun. But if it brings me my Kraven the Hunter, who's one of my personal favorites of all time, I'm all for it. But the only way for this spell to be redone or undone is instead of having people forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, how about we just have people forget that Peter Parker even exists? Like,
That's a big
you're not
sacrifice.
even that's a big sacrifice, because
Big.
you got to go it alone the rest of your existence for the betterment of everybody else. And
It's like Spider-Man
oof,
is more beneficial to the world than Peter Parker is.
Peter
Right?
Parker.
That's that in his mind. Like,
Yes.
and I, and that when they were having that conversation, that's when it was hitting me again, because I was like, is he really going to do this? I'm like, oh my goodness, man! Like, I was just like, this sucks.
Yeah.
Sucks.
For me personally, just watching him have to make that sacrifice, because he's done it in the Raimi verse. He did it in the Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But here, that's a lifetime of loneliness he's signing up for. It's almost like, if you remember the One More Day storyline where they kind of borrow a lot of this from
absolutely.
somewhat.
Yeah.
All of a sudden now he's not married. He doesn't have everything. No one knows who he is. Everything's back to normal. We hit the soft reset, the soft reboot. And then we're left with, there's no Tony Stark anymore, because Happy doesn't know who Peter is. So there's no leaning on Stark Tech. He fashions a Ditko suit at the end of the movie. So, a lot of people didn't understand that the suit he was making was more akin to Steve Ditko's iteration of Spider-Man, which that color schematic.
Yeah, the original. Yeah.
We're getting an original Spider-Man. We're getting just poor, broke-ass GED studying Spider-Man.
So everything still happens.
Mm-hmm.
They Spider-Man take his mask off is the assumption there, right?
Wait, say that again. You broke up. I'm sorry.
So Spider.
Yep, I think I lost him. I might have lost you, Taro. Just let me know when you get back.
So I mean, that's how I'm reading it.
Okay. I have you back now. So what were you saying?
Okay, can you hear me? I was saying that the way that I was thinking the spell works is pretty much like the events still happen. Like, there was no time reset or anything like that. Have a moment where Peter Parker has got to face all happens, but so he still has the suit on and everything, so it didn't affect like time or anything.
No,
the whole thing with Peter Parker is just whatever. So I mean, they can't possibly erase the magic, but.
And that's what confused a lot of people, was the spell in general. Like, what exactly did they undo? And basically, Spider-Man the hero still exists, and a lot of people are confused about that. But Spider-Man the hero still exists. So if Tony was still alive, or if Cap was still alive, they'd be like, okay, cool, Spider-Man. Or if Ant-Man saw him, like, oh, I remember you from the fight, in the airport. You know what I mean? But we don't know if any Avengers are going to recognize him. But then what that does is make him more of a street level superhero again. Maybe we don't get him fighting people from space. Maybe we just get him fighting Kraven and the Chameleon. You know what I mean? So who's to say where it's going to go? But I think I want to see where this goes in terms of just, this is what No Way Home meant. He has no home now. He's just Peter Parker, just a dude, but Spider-Man still exists. And with great power still comes great responsibility, and he's got a responsibility to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And all in all, just it ended on a good note. It ended on the note it had to be, because without any kind of sacrifice and torment, we wouldn't have Peter Parker. Him making that grand sacrifice or having to give up something because he's selfless. Because Spider-Man is not allowed to be selfish. The one time he is selfish, it blows up in his face. So in this situation, from here on in, I'm very curious as to where they're going to take, Tom Holland Spider-Man, or whether or not we're just going to get a whole new one. If Andrew's going to come back, if Toby's going to come back, But I'm excited to find out, where we're going. And then at the end, we get the post-credit scene of Eddie Brock drunk in a bar in Mexico, talking about the tin guy who flies in space, the green dude with the anger issues problems, and then the purple dude collecting gems who made it seem like he was Grimace, which had me laughing. And then he winds up after the spell going back to his universe, but leaving an ounce of the symbiote behind. The collective mind of the symbiote that they talked about in Let There Be Carnage is now in the MCU. So I was talking with one of my friends earlier. Matt Gargan is going to be, for me, I think, the MCU version of Venom, because we have the Scorpion still, and Matt Gargan does eventually wear the Venom symbiote, and he's a more bloodthirsty version, especially if we're going to have the Thunderbolts at some point, because he was in the Thunderbolts. So I think, honestly, that's the way to go. Terrell, I don't know if you're still with me here, but where do you see, if you're still here, where do you see them taking the Venom symbiote in the MCU, if you're still here? Yep, I think I lost my co-host, so I'm going to try to boot him back and bring him back to the stream until he comes back. But what I'm going to say is, all in all, this movie, then you have the second post-credit scene, which is basically a trailer for Doctor Strange. It's a teaser trailer for Doctor Strange. And I get Shuma Gorath. I get Wong as the Sorcerer Supreme. We have the Scarlet Witch up in here too. So we got a lot of good stuff to delve into for the new and improved Doctor Strange movie. As I bring in Terrell back to the show. Welcome back, sir. What I was saying was, if you're still here, where do you see, in your opinion, the symbiote being left in the MCU? Who do you see as Venom? Who do you want to see as Venom based off that post-credit scene?
They really haven't set anybody up. Only thing they really set up is, like you said, Matt Gargan to be the Scorpion.
Mm-hmm.
Since they did, but they really didn't take the time to do like a Flash Thompson. There's no Eddie Brock, as far as I'm honestly not sure.
I thought about it too, like who they could do. I would not want to see this iteration of Flash Thompson as Agent Venom. I just wouldn't want to see it. It wouldn't make any sense to me. No disrespect to the actor playing Flash Thompson, but you ain't it, Chief.
They haven't given him enough.
Right. He's more like a hanger-on type, so he ain't it. But if they want, and this is how somebody pitched it. I don't know if it's been running rampant on the internet. You can bring in Matt Gargan as a Scorpion for the next Spider-Man movie. He gets thoroughly trashed by Spider-Man. He gets his ass whooped by because J. Jonah Jameson hires him. And then, because he's so angry because he got his ass whooped, he bonds with the symbiote to be the second half of this movie, where he fights Venom as the Scorpion, which I think would actually be a nice little wrinkle added to this going forward. But who's to say what they're going to do? But I'm just saying that that's something that I would like to see. But then again, we might even have our own version of Eddie Brock, because this Eddie was in Mexico. So we don't know if the new Eddie's going to be in Mexico or the new Eddie's going to be in New York, or it could just be somebody else. But all in all, I want to say, is this the best Spider-Man movie I ever saw? Yes. Is this a top 4 MCU movie? Hell yes. Is it top 3? Potentially. So if you watch my cartoon reviews, if you watch my reviews here on Big Gold Belt Media, I don't like to give grades like that. But I will say Endgame, Cap 2, Infinity War, Spider-Man No Way Home. I can interchange any of those characters, any of those movies, and be okay with it. I thought, like I said, in this movie, everything kind of played well into it. The villains were great. The villains were top notch. Everybody filled a purpose. Didn't feel like an afterthought, except the Lizard. I just thought he was a little bit of a throwaway character, but they had to do something within the Amazing Universe, and you couldn't bring back the Rhino. So I'm just curious to see where they go from here. We'll see if Terrell's back one more time. If we lose him again, it's fine. We'll just talk about it off air. But I want to see where they go from here. I give this, like I said, it's top 3, maybe top 4, depending on what day of the week it is. I'm going to go see it again. And I implore everybody here watching Big Gold Belt Media to watch it and let me know your thoughts in the comments and in the context. Let me know what you thought. Please rate, subscribe to us on YouTube, here on social media. I am at Damon G Show on my social media. If Terrell was here, he'd give you a social media platforms and all that, but technical difficulties. I'm at Damon G Show on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Tune in to BigGoldBeltMedia.com for more updates, reviews, and articles and things of that nature. And we will catch you next time. Let us know.